Picture this for a second. You're holding a phone, you dial your best friend's number, and within seconds you're chatting away. Crystal clear connection, no static, no delays. Now, here's where it gets wild. That phone has no SIM card. Zero. No data plan, no monthly bill, no network provider breathing down your neck. You're probably thinking I've lost my mind, right? Like this is some fantasy tech from a movie set in 2050. But hang on, because what I'm about to tell you is happening right now, and it started with one young guy who looked at the world's communication system and said, "Yeah, I can do better than that." Let me take you to a place where most of us would struggle to last a week. We're talking about a tiny village in rural Namibia where the bus shows up maybe once a day if the stars align just right. This is where our story begins, in a community where buying phone credit means choosing between communication and your next meal. While most kids there dreamed about escaping to bright city lights, one teenager was obsessing over something completely different. He wanted to flip the script entirely, bring the future to his village instead of running away from it. This kid, let's call him the village tech wizard, had zero interest in traditional education. Hand him a textbook and watch his eyes glaze over faster than you can say, homework. But give him a busted radio? A phone that everyone else considered trash? Man, his whole face would transform. It was like watching someone discover buried treasure. While his peers were out kicking soccer balls around dusty fields, he was elbow-deep in electronic guts, pulling apart anything with wires and circuits like some kind of technological surgeon. The internet became his real classroom. Not the kind where you zone out during lectures. This was different. Hours melted away as he absorbed everything about signal transmission, circuit boards, and the invisible waves that carry our voices across continents. His bedroom transformed into this crazy laboratory where formal education went to die and real learning was born. Every video tutorial was a masterclass, every comment section a chance to dig deeper. Now, here's where things take a turn you won't see coming. The year was 2012, and curiosity almost ended everything before it truly began. Our young inventor stumbled across some seriously dangerous content online, instructions for building explosive devices. But wait, before you judge, understand this wasn't about destruction or violence. The kid was mesmerized by the engineering complexity, the precise calculations required, the sheer audacity of creating something so powerful from basic materials. So naturally, being young and fearless, he decided to test his understanding. The explosion that followed landed him in a hospital bed, fighting for his life. Most rational people would have sworn off electronics forever after that close call. You nearly blow yourself up. You find a new hobby, right? Wrong. This brush with death did something unexpected. It lit a fire that couldn't be extinguished. Lying in that hospital bed, bandaged and bruised, he realized something profound. His hands weren't just meant to tinker. They were meant to build things that mattered, things that could reshape how people lived. His science teacher saw something special in this unusual student. While others wrote him off as reckless or distracted, this educator recognized raw genius waiting to be channeled. There was this national competition coming up, a chance for students to showcase their innovations. Our inventor created this incredible dual-purpose machine. It could dry seeds and cool them, solving a massive problem for local farmers who lost crops to moisture and heat. When he won first place, the judges couldn't believe it. They were convinced some professional engineer was secretly helping this village kid. After thorough investigation, they discovered the shocking truth. Everything came from his own mind, with only basic guidance from teachers. But while everyone was celebrating this victory, something bigger was brewing in his workshop. For 2 years, he worked like a man possessed on an idea so bold it seemed impossible. A phone that could make calls without depending on any cellular network, using radio frequencies instead. Think about that for a moment. Every telecom company on the planet builds their empire on one simple principle. You need them to communicate. This teenager was essentially saying, actually, no we don't. His parents, unemployed and struggling, somehow scraped together money they desperately needed for basic necessities. They believed in their son's vision even when it meant going without. Using salvaged parts from old televisions and discarded phones, he began constructing something that shouldn't exist according to conventional wisdom. The final creation was absolutely mind-blowing. Not just a working phone that made calls without SIM cards or airtime, but an entire communication system, including radio capabilities, television reception, lighting, cooling, and power outlets. All running on the same brilliant engineering principles. When he unveiled this invention in 2016, the country lost its collective mind. Media outlets scrambled to cover the story. International attention poured in. Here was this teenager from the middle of nowhere who had potentially solved one of Africa's biggest challenges: affordable communication for rural populations. The implications were staggering. Imagine entire communities suddenly able to connect without worrying about credit, coverage, or corporate control. Then came the phone call that seemed like destiny calling. The country's telecommunications giant reached out personally. A high-ranking executive presented an official letter promising full scholarship funding for technology studies after high school. This wasn't normal. They never funded students straight from secondary school. But this wasn't a normal student. They saw potential to revolutionize their entire industry and wanted to be part of that revolution. Dreams crystallized into concrete plans. Electronics engineering degree, scaling the invention, transforming communication across the continent. The path forward seemed clear, inevitable even. There was just one problem. Our genius inventor was brilliant with electronics but struggled with traditional academics. When final exam results arrived, he had failed. Just like that, the scholarship vanished into thin air. 7 years later, when journalists asked the telecom company about their promise, the response was ice cold. They claimed no knowledge of any agreement, suggested maybe the inventor was confused about who he'd spoken with. The company that had celebrated him now acted like he was a ghost, a figment of imagination rather than a flesh-and-blood genius they'd abandoned. Academic failure was just the appetizer in this feast of disappointments. The real main course came when he tried to get his invention officially recognized. Regulatory authorities refused to license his device because their systems literally couldn't comprehend his technology. It didn't fit into their neat little boxes of how communication was supposed to work. Multiple companies promised to help bring his invention to market. Every single one ghosted him after initial meetings. Why? Because established telecom providers saw his free communication system as a nuclear bomb aimed at their profit margins. By 2023, the frustration in his voice was heartbreaking. I thought by now, people everywhere would be using this technology. I believed we'd have moved past the limitations of traditional phones. The weight of broken promises was suffocating. What's the point of creating solutions when nobody wants to implement them? Maybe I should just work quietly, build things for myself, forget about changing the world. When regulatory authorities were questioned about the situation, they revealed the catch-22 destroying innovators across the continent. They hadn't received proper applications for frequency certification. Here's the tragedy laid bare. A brilliant mind creates revolutionary technology, but lacks the knowledge, connections, and resources to navigate bureaucratic mazes designed to exclude people exactly like him. Despite everything, when asked if he'd take his talents overseas where they'd be appreciated, his response revealed both fierce loyalty and painful wisdom. Since I was young, I dreamed of creating something in Africa that would eventually be recognized globally. I want to stay here, but I've watched too many African inventors share their ideas only to see them disappear or get stolen. This story isn't just about one person's struggle. It's about an entire continent hemorrhaging genius. The examples are everywhere if you look. One inventor created a local social networking platform that could have competed globally. Another built satellite boosters from literal garbage to bring internet to remote areas. Students in one country built their nation's first electric car from scratch. Developers across the continent create mobile applications solving real problems. Engineers design systems that could revolutionize agriculture, healthcare, education. These brilliant minds exist in every corner of the continent, creating solutions to problems the rest of the world hasn't even identified yet. So why aren't these innovations reaching global markets? Why do Western products dominate while African innovations struggle for recognition in their own countries? The answer is systemic abandonment. African inventors get their 15 minutes of fame, a few newspaper articles, maybe a pat on the back from a politician looking for a photo opportunity. Then, silence. The companies, governments, and wealthy individuals who could scale these innovations consistently look elsewhere, importing solutions instead of investing in homegrown genius. Inventors struggle alone, watching their creations gather dust while inferior foreign alternatives flood the market. Innovation advocates across the continent see this pattern repeating endlessly. The political will to develop innovative talent is practically non-existent. Without proper support systems, the brightest minds will continue fleeing to countries that actually value their contributions. Western nations built their economic dominance on technology and scientific advancement. Their innovations flood African markets: phones, computers, vehicles, software. This creates a vicious cycle where Western economies grow stronger, while Africa remains trapped as a consumer rather than creator. Meanwhile, leadership continues seeking external solutions for internal problems, as if innovation is something that only happens in Silicon Valley or Shanghai. It's not just economic poverty holding the continent back, it's poverty of imagination, poverty of belief in local potential. But our young inventor represents something different, something that refuses to die despite systematic attempts to kill it. 7 years after his breakthrough, he graduated with an electronics engineering degree from a vocational training center. The beautiful irony? Failing traditional high school led him to practical education that actually served his goals better. His education was eventually funded by a foundation and mining company after the founding president learned about his story through media coverage. At graduation, he reflected on the journey. I started this project 7 years ago as a high school student. The device works as a network booster for areas with poor signal and has potential for so much more. Currently doing basic electronic repairs to survive, his ambitions have evolved rather than diminished. I'm working on projects that will surpass what I achieved before. The challenge isn't creating, it's finding genuine support to scale these solutions. His critique of the system has sharpened through experience. Governments talk about supporting innovation, but talk doesn't build factories or change regulations. Real support means taking risks on unproven ideas, believing in potential before it's profitable. Yet optimism survives alongside frustration. Technology evolves rapidly. What we use today will be obsolete tomorrow. We must prepare ourselves with skills and mindset for constant change. This perspective reveals character forged through adversity. Despite broken promises, regulatory nightmares, and years of struggle, bitterness hasn't taken root. Instead, strategic thinking has emerged, understanding challenges while maintaining determination to find sustainable solutions. His story forces uncomfortable questions about innovation and opportunity. Why do certain inventors receive millions in funding while others can't even get meetings? Why do we import solutions to problems that local innovators have already solved? Why do we celebrate genius briefly, then abandon it systematically? The technology exists. He proved that. A phone that works without SIM cards isn't science fiction. It's sitting in a workshop gathering dust. The implications are staggering. Millions of people in remote areas could communicate freely. Emergency services could reach places currently cut off from help. Education could spread to communities where connectivity means choosing between food and phone credit. But bringing revolutionary solutions to market requires more than genius. It needs regulatory frameworks that encourage rather than obstruct innovation. financial backing that takes risks on unproven ideas, manufacturing capabilities that can scale prototypes into products, distribution networks willing to challenge existing business models. Most importantly, it requires belief that solutions can come from unexpected places, from young people without fancy degrees or Silicon Valley connections. The impact of this story ripples outward. When young Africans see what happened to someone so talented and determined, they face a choice. Give up before starting, accepting that the system excludes people like them, or persist despite knowing the odds, believing they might be the one to finally break through. There's reason for hope hidden in the struggle. Despite everything, he persisted, completed his education, continues innovating, remains committed to developing African solutions for African challenges. He represents a generation refusing to accept that innovation must be imported, that genius only grows in certain zip codes. At 29, with formal engineering credentials and hard-won understanding of both technical and systemic challenges, he might be better positioned than ever to create lasting impact. His journey provides a blueprint for what not to do. Don't expect immediate support, don't trust verbal promises, don't wait for permission to innovate, but also what to do. Persist despite discouragement. Build knowledge systematically. Maintain hope while developing strategy. His next invention might be the one that finally breaks through, not because it's more brilliant than the SIM-free phone, but because he now understands the game being played. He knows the barriers aren't just technical but political, economic, and social. Armed with this knowledge, the quiet genius from a forgotten village might finally get the support needed to transform potential into reality. The phone that works without SIM cards exists. It's real, functional, ready to change millions of lives. The question isn't whether the technology works. It does. The question is whether those with power to support, invest in, and scale African innovation will finally act on rhetoric about supporting local genius. Every day that passes without action is another day of missed opportunities. Another day, talented young people lose faith in the system. Another day, the next world-changing innovation sits gathering dust in a workshop. As he said recently, finding genuine partners interested in more than photo opportunities could take these ideas global. The technology is ready. The talent is proven. What's missing is courage. Courage to bet on the unexpected, to challenge existing systems, to believe that the next breakthrough might come from a place most people can't even find on a map. The young man who nearly died learning how things explode has become a symbol of both African innovation, its incredible potential, and its heartbreaking challenges. His journey continues, carrying hope that persistence might eventually overcome systemic barriers. That one day, African solutions to African problems won't need foreign validation to be taken seriously. This isn't just about one inventor or one invention. It's about recognizing that genius doesn't respect borders, that innovation doesn't require permission, that the next idea to transform how we live might be brewing in the mind of someone society has already written off. The village boy who refused to accept limitations placed on him by circumstance represents every brilliant mind waiting for their chance to shine. So, here's my question to you. How many world-changing inventions are we missing because we're too busy looking in the expected places? How many problems could be solved if we supported the problem solvers already among us? The SIM-free phone exists, but it's more than technology. It's proof that innovation happens everywhere, genius grows in unexpected soil, and sometimes the most revolutionary ideas come from people who don't know they're supposed to wait for permission. If this story fired you up, if it made you think differently about where innovation comes from, then do me a favor. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. Hit that like button not just for the algorithm, but as a vote for supporting innovators everywhere, especially the ones nobody's paying attention to yet. Subscribe if you want more stories about people refusing to accept the world as it is, choosing instead to build the world as it could be. Because that's what real innovation looks like. Not waiting for change, but becoming the change. One circuit board, one invention, one refused limitation at a time.